Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to some Stormgate discussion. I was one of the privileged few that was able to attend a summit that Frost Giant put on, giving us a deeper look into what they're doing for Stormgate. So I am coincidentally wearing their merch. I really didn't intend to, but this
Mine was in the washer.
Shirt, I swear. I'm not just shilling. Anyways, we do have a couple of points, right, to make sure that we don't reveal anything that they don't want us to reveal. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up and then kind of go over the spiel and then get into some of my very vague thoughts about what we saw.
Just a heads up, I watched this already and it's a little more critical than the others.
Because the team is hoping to reveal more to the public at the PC Game Show. So the PC Gaming Show is going to be happening Sunday, June 11th. I did apply to be a co-streamer, but we don't know if that's actually going to happen. But of course, I'll just...
I did the same. I wasn't approved yet, but if we're not approved, might just do it anyway.
Discuss what they show afterwards as well, because we can't really go in depth with this particular video. But yes, I attended the Stormgate VIP Summit. I can give the general impressions of the events. The closed alpha is in July, and it will be under NDA, so I won't be able to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if we talked about this yet. Closed alpha, it's not like the alpha comes out and we'll be streaming 5 days straight. I think we can't stream it, but we can talk about what we see. That's my understanding of the alpha.
Testers selected through lottery, specific testing criteria, and they will include people who registered for the beta on playstormgate.com. So you're probably gonna go ahead and do that, right? If you haven't already. I'll be able to publicly discuss my general impressions about the closed alpha and future closed beta tests. So again, kind of vague, like, yeah, I liked it, I didn't like it. And then also, wishlisting the game on Steam is still the best way to support Stormgate and Frost Giant if you so desire. Now, what I want to go ahead and do is just show all of the art that I'm allowed you to show you guys, because I know everyone's excited for every little last detail. Tons of other content creators are also making videos like this because, well, this is the day and time that we were allowed to discuss things. But here we have some of the art of the characters, just kind of giving more of a general feel about the universe, I think, which I actually think some of these are kind of important to show people.
That's Kilaris. That is so 1000% Kilaris, who hosted the DreamHack regional finals with us and is hosting PUBG and a lot of StarCraft as well. You can't tell me that that's not Kilaris. Right? 1000%. I think also the other characters we have seen before, instead of that scientist dude who clearly works a lot and might need some substances to work a lot.
A lot of people are complaining that it looks too cartoony, too Fortnite-y seems to be a common critique. That's a weird one. And I can see how people would interpret that with a concept art like this, as well as seeing some of the in-game models, again, pre-alpha. So just keep that in mind. The earliest that we're usually shown anything. I mean, some people don't even bother showing anything for pre-alpha. But I think this is important because it does show a little bit more grittiness to it. So it's not just going to be la-di-da unicorns and fairies and stuff, which I think already we know that the story wasn't going to head that direction anyways. But then there could have been a real... what do you want to say? A real, like, they talk about really intense things, but then the art shows a lack of grittiness. Imagine she's in the war and she just doesn't have any, marks or anything on her. That would have been weird, right? So this looks a little more, just basically cool. I think we can use that word. It looks a little bit cooler. This one's whatever. So I definitely wanted to get that.
The dick at Kilaris. Looks like whatever. I don't care.
Out of the way, because I do think that's a positive. That most people are going to be looking for is, are we actually going to be expecting something that is not just appealing to the casuals, but then kind of almost accidentally appeals to like kids more than anything else. And I just think that these new images kind of show that they're not really, we're not going to be worrying about that. There's more depth and grittiness and realness to it. So we got some landscape concept art, some of the ideas of how the terrain will look and the maps as well as a highly rendered building. I was gonna say depot, but I really don't know what it is.
UI. Oh yeah, we haven't shown this before, I think.
And then we have some UI, which I know people are very interested in to see if they're going to kind of replicate what RTS AI. Well, this is the one they're currently working with, and we can at least see that there's 3 resources, or 2 plus supply, I should say. And that's how much we're allowed to know about, as well as a timer, which I assume will be accurate to the real time. And then just
I think that's different in StarCraft, right? We don't have a timer in Warcraft, so that's an improvement for us. I think it's interesting that they went for this classic thing with the left and right side being open and not use the entire space. Like, actually, I don't know how it is for Dota and LoL because I haven't played them for so long. But they use the entire bottom, at least in observer mode. So maybe you could make it not as high as it is, but wider. But it gives a more open feel, so I can understand it. To a degree. But yeah, for UI, we'll see if that's the right thing to do.
just different, I guess, pools, really, to show the background a little bit. We got some T-pose models on top of the terrain to show the actual size of it.
That's also, once again, like the different height levels. This definitely looks like you can jump with certain units, right? Like, you can't still... there we go. You can, with some units, probably jump from here to here, or from up here. You have a, I don't know. You prepare a little ambush. You have advanced height, you have advanced sight, and then you jump down on your opponent like that. So looks like a pretty typical mechanic, right?
We got some T-pose models on top of the terrain to show the actual size of it. Nice and pretty, nice and pretty, nice and pretty. Then really gritty.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. This is art, of course, but this reminds me so much about the in-building missions of course, StarCraft as well, but also Command and Conquer. I don't know if you played Red Alert 1, was it in 2 as well? I'm not sure. But I love the single-player missions where you just have a handful of units, oftentimes including Tanya, which is super OP, and you have to make it with these handful of units through a complex, through a laboratory, for example. And those were the best missions. Loved them.
And gory. And then during the day, there is still a giant skull and bones. So I don't know what's happening with this factory, but anyways, again, you can see that it is going to have some real, M-rated possibilities, I suppose. I don't know if it'll actually be rated M, but the point is, much as Wings of Liberty developed, had a different, more cartoony style to Brood War, which of course people still criticize and yada yada yada. There's still a lot of that, just kind of, we're not playing a kid's game that you get the feeling of in all of the expansions for StarCraft 2. So it's nice to see that that's the case again here. I wasn't really so worried, by the way. I feel like I need to kind of over-explain this because it feels like a lot of the discussion whenever new concept art comes out is whether or not it's too kiddie. So that's kind of why I'm being obnoxious about it.
Yeah. It's a mobile game. It looks like a mobile game. I explained this before, that I like it more when it pops out than the other approach.
About this. Here's some actual in-game models. So everything else was concept art. So this is actually what it's going to look like in 3D. And so you can see that this looks very reminiscent of Terran, of course. This looks very much like a dropship or whatever you want to call it. This guy, like a charge lot Lancer Marine dude, I suppose. This actually works. We were able to see the building animation, and the building animation, English, is actually really cool looking. I imagine this is gonna have some glow effects and whatnot. There is a nice attention to detail, I think, for what we were able to see, but obviously
this, by the way, 100% science vessel, is it not? Like from StarCraft. So floating, round shape, little dots here and there. It's obviously like science themed or something. And then you go over to this. It is pretty similar.
Attention to detail, I think, for what we were able to see, but obviously with pre-alpha, you're only going to get so much. This is probably the picture that I'm going to spend the most time on, because it kind of shows everything that we can talk about, as well as some things that I can't. And of course, you got to have the chicken.
Okay, interesting that you don't see it this way. Science Dragoon looks like a mothership core. Flying Dragoon. Okay. Didn't strike me as such.
And then the actual model of that, which, yeah, you know, it's whatever. Not super interested in that one, but I do think this is kind of the best point of discussion for me now that I'm done showing you guys all the things that we're allowed to show you guys. Of course, you're probably tuning into this to get my general impressions more than anything else. Everyone else is going to be showing you this art as well. So here are my very general impressions, because I did ask, you know, what I could and could not talk about. And a lot of the specifics that we saw that would highlight, be great examples of what I'm about to discuss would be better, but instead I kind of got to like vague it out, you know? So here we go. I'm going to start with some positives first, because that's always the nice thing to do. And I should have definitely written this down somewhere, but I'm going to go off the top of my head here. Positives, still very much agree with 90 to 95% of what the developers are talking about when they talk to us, their goals, their ambitions, their focus, basically agree on almost everything.
I agree with that, but it's just talk, as I mentioned a couple of times before. What they say that their philosophy is really good.
There are a couple of things I don't agree on, or I kind of hear and I'm like, I wouldn't really say that. For instance, there was one developer who kind of compared back and forth creep spread, attack, and defend with TVZ as a nice mechanic, I guess you could say, of StarCraft 2. And I think in general, the idealistic version of TVZ creep spread, yes. What actually happens in StarCraft 2, not so much, which is that the Terran player gives a college try in defeating the creep spread, but then eventually it overwhelms depending on how long the game goes. I actually don't think that's really the best mechanic to highlight. I think alongside kind of like macro mechanics, there's a reason that they exist. There's a reason this happens this way. It's not imbalanced any way you look at it. But the original vision of the StarCraft 2 team and how creep spread is going to work, I think, is now massively different.
I'm not knowledgeable enough about StarCraft to really talk about it. Maybe you have an idea? Just like that macro mechanics are part of a game. I think it's not really necessary, to be honest. It's just overcomplicating things. I don't know.
Because people got so good at it. So that's an example of something that I was kind of just like, that wasn't my favorite comparison. But again, everything else I still generally compare with. I do think that, what else was a positive here? Okay, so now that I got it in my mind. So the other thing that I thought was really cool.
Had to pause the video to think about a second positive point. It's kind of rough.
Was that the music was pretty good. We got to listen to at least one more track, if not two. I guess I couldn't quite, I wasn't paying attention at some point, honestly. But we definitely listened to one new soundtrack single, and then it was actually quite cool. Will it compare to Brood War Terran theme? I don't know about that, but the music certainly sounds like it's on point. The other...
I agree. I got, from some music that I heard, big Command and Conquer vibes, which is to me a good thing. And that was like one part of the soundtrack, not saying that everything sounds that way. But yeah, I got from some parts Command and Conquer vibe, which I really, really liked.
Positive that I saw was that the animations are not uniform. They're very unique, which is absolutely a huge positive. There's some other RTS out in the field. I actually would say that some of the worst RTS, whoopsie-daisy, have this problem where a lot of things move and animate in very similar fashion, or you can't tell how they're moving and animating. which is a different issue, but we'll get into that. And so everything looks really uniform, whether it's someone on horseback or someone walking. That didn't have that problem as far as I could see. You could kind of tell the weight of a model and how it was going to move. And then when it did something that you didn't expect, it was because there was something that was cool going on, something unique that was going on. And the building animations, I already kind of went over that, also looked really cool. Again, that attention to detail that just kind of makes it fun to play if we kind of think back to our younger years as non-competitors and just, playing around with a video game. There's some cool things for that too. So that was really positive for me. The weight of the units and what they kind of wanted to make them look like and sound like and feel like, although I can't speak too much to the feeling, and have it all mixed together so that, again, you can kind of just say, when I move this unit, this is how it moves. So a Marauder moves differently than a Marine, moves differently than a Henley, and so on and so forth.
I agree. In general, if things are like, it's not that this thing here on the right hand side feels like it's floating or something. When it does a step, you feel it makes a step. It's not super fastly running or anything, I guess. So yeah, I agree with that.
So that was really good. And then I did have one blown away moment, but I can't discuss what it is because they want to hide it for the reveal. So I just generally, I had one moment where I was like, oh, okay, that was super cool. However, with that said, all the positives out of the way, I will say that I have my overall impression was just perfectly whelmed. I wasn't overwhelmed or underwhelmed. I was really hoping for more, oh my gosh, that was so cool moments, and I only got one really. And then otherwise, I did find some personal issues with what they showed gameplay wise, which again I can't really discuss too much in specifics, so I'm going to try and dodge and weave here. But the overall negative that dragged those positives I just listed down was the readability of the game and the feeling of the game wasn't perfect. So I know I was just talking about the positive that it seemed like it, like the mech felt like a mech, right? When it moved, when it sounded, whatever. That all sounded fine. That all looked fine. But then there were some other examples shown of how units move and how units interact, and I was not impressed. So again, I can't really go into details, but the feeling that I'm talking about, right? Not the lumbering type of feeling of stomping feet, but the feeling of moving your units and feeling like they're listening to you. Marine, Stutter Step Micro, Banshee Micro, Muta Micro, any of that type of stuff that we just, maybe don't appreciate often, but when you think about it, oh yeah, that feels really good. It didn't look like that happened in Stormgate. Now, I really can't talk a lot about the feeling of it and how it's actually going to move because I haven't played it. So I'll definitely be paying a lot of attention when I can finally get my hands on it. But certainly the smoothness of it didn't feel right. And I can only hope that it was perhaps user error. The people controlling it weren't that great, or that it's pre-alpha, right? So they haven't really gotten a lot of things worked out, or that it was the wrong units to show doing what they were doing. So vague.
Yeah, I don't really agree, but I also didn't focus on that too much. I focused more on the overall feel and not that specific. Don't really share that from the first impression, but if she's correct, then might just get polished in beta, especially with such precise feedback.
So that it could have been one of those, obviously, and pre.
Well, not in this case, but if there's eyes on details like this, there will definitely be reports on issues with such movements once we're all able to play the game.
alpha probably being the most damning, but what I saw, I wasn't too impressed. Additionally, I talked about the clearness, right? The visibility of the units, the clarity when you just take a quick glance at something. I also was not very impressed with. So this is, again, something that's hard to really say right off the bat because it's pre-alpha. So there's a lot of extra detail that goes into these types of issues that we actually saw. The guy who did it for StarCraft 2, the guy who, like, you know, made the units pop. I don't know what his actual job title is or his name, unfortunately, but he, you know, one of the first things they did was they showed us many moons ago at this point how that layering works to make something pop, and I was blown away by that. And
clearly wasn't working on Reforged, that guy.
That just made so much sense to me when the guy like added layers, and he was like, and this is why it looks like it kind of pops. And I was like, oh. So I know they're capable of it, and you know, they literally have the guy that worked on it for StarCraft, but it wasn't there, and it's not here in this particular image right now. So that's
I would love to see that presentation from the guy. It's super interesting.
That's kind of weird, is that I didn't see it, but I feel like there's a lot of potential. But what I was trying to say was that it's hard to always, like, I don't know, like, bring this up because we know that esports has a problem, unlike more traditional sports, where you do kind of have to play the game or watch a decent bit of it to really understand what's going on, no matter how clear the game is, arguably. So there.
I don't know. Not at an entry level, really. To grab someone's attention, it's not really necessary. And then, of course, you develop some knowledge from there. But for example, in CSGO, I don't need much more than a score and a kill indicator. I don't know too much about StarCraft 2. I played the campaign and that's about it. I don't need to know in-depth builds or something. I can see, oh, this guy has a huge army, but this guy has a bit of an economy, and then logically things are evening out. Or in Warcraft, I can deduct the state of a game from hero level, supply, etc. When I started watching Warcraft, I didn't even know all units. You appreciate it more, but I don't think it's necessary. I watch the TI in Dota, and that's pretty much all I'm watching every week. I don't even know all the heroes, not even close. And I still appreciate it. Maybe that's just me. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like you get an idea pretty quickly what a unit is doing, even though you don't know the exact numbers, for example.
That, like, it's kind of a weird space, but for right now, I think this is a again, wonderful image to stick on because it kind of shows all of those things that I was talking about.
Actually, on the flip side, it can be even contrarian. The more you know about a game, the more boring it gets. I don't want to say that's why I never analyzed Warcraft that much, but when things are uncertain, there's definitely more excitement for me. So my understanding of the game, even though people in YouTube comments still point out that I have no clue what's going on in the game, my understanding of Warcraft 3 is a lot deeper than 9 years ago. Obviously, I've seen so many more games. I thought about it a lot more and in very different ways. So sometimes a game is indeed over after 4 minutes, but you somehow have to pretend it's not. And knowing that makes things kind of boring. So sometimes less is more. That's also why not all information is usually displayed on overlays, especially in StarCraft.
And specifically for the clarity, we're missing, I feel like, some of that popping outline. If we look at the shadows, they don't really look like they're attached to the units. Those details, I think, are bound to be improved on. So I'm just saying, as of right now, watching some of the pre-alpha, not even alpha, the visual clarity was underwhelming, and the actual feeling of the game that I could get with my eyes was also underwhelming, and that just drags down a lot of my overall impression, because those are the two biggest things that I was really excited to see in action. But you know, it's only certain clips, it's only a certain stage of development, so on and so forth, yada yada yada. But
as far as I saw and heard on the Stormgate Reddit and the few videos that we've seen, she's kind of the only one saying this. Everyone else mentioned how things are popping. So yeah, not really sure. Like, maybe I'm also a little bit biased because Reforged, and nothing was clear in Reforged, so I see this now, and it's obviously a big improvement. But yeah, it's also hard to see because the stills that we got, there's not too many units, if at all. So hard to judge from what we have as material right now that we can talk about.
But I did want to go ahead and also show you guys something that I think is really important as we move away from moving away from the general impressions, just talking about general design and I don't know, anticipation and you know, what we could see in the future. I did look up StarCraft 2 alpha in-game, but again, this is even a little bit more advanced than what Stormgate's currently showing us, because this is alpha and Stormgate's showing us pre-alpha. But I thought it'd be really nice to see the differences and what I'm trying to discuss and what could be improved on in the future, so that you guys don't believe that I'm just, you know, desperately holding on to this thread of hope that the game will be good, and I'm just, you know, being too nice to the people at Frost Giant, whom I do like. But I do take a lot of what I saw with a grain of salt, because of, you know, literally having the guy show us how he made these units pop, and then taking a look at what StarCraft 2 used to look like and saying, oh, okay, there's still a lot to improve on. So we're not at that like pre-alpha, almost like more Brood War image that if you look on the internet you can find. We are actually at the point at which it basically looks like StarCraft 2, but you can see how kind of blurry it is, how you can't quite differentiate as much as you seem to in StarCraft 2 now. Yeah, between the units and the terrain. You know, a lot of these do look okay, but again, some of that pop, it's the only word I can think of, unfortunately. The outline that you can barely tell is there isn't impacted here. This battle is pretty clear, and I would actually say this is a great example of how clear StarCraft 2 can be.
Yeah.
In the blink of an eye, although it looks like the stalkers are smaller than they are now, for instance, and how that is not what I saw with Stormgate. So like worse than that is what I'm currently seeing with Stormgate. So that's a bummer, but hold on, you can see a drastic improvement somewhere else, and you can just see how much more could be done with this lovely image. This is my go-to one for saying how different StarCraft 2 ended up being, but also how much they clearly thought about clarity in the battlefield, because Phoenix, I guess, you know, is supposed to be more magical than they currently are.
That's crazy. Like, you can barely see the mutas, whatever. Holy moly. That's really bad indeed. I mean, it's also the purple player color that will not be used in esports at all. So red or blue would certainly be better as a color already than purple is. But yeah, oh my god.
Just blue everywhere. And someone at some point said, you know what, this doesn't look really good. And so not only the Phoenix change, but also these mutas, I would say, probably got more attention to them to differentiate, again, them in the background. Oh, this also isn't, this is kind of like the camera's lowered a little bit. But again, like, just good examples at how much more could still be done. So if you compare a lot of these images to, I think, current images, you would possibly see all the little detail that has gone into developing StarCraft 2 post-alpha, but then also as far as the other expansions, because at some point, StarCraft 2 did get graphical updates. I know it doesn't seem like it, but they did. And then I wanted to go ahead and compare what I saw from Stormgate and StarCraft 2 to other RTSs that I think failed harder and still actually delivered their product or successfully did it. But first,
it's really cool because I don't know. Not saying I don't know anything about Age of Empires, but I watched very, very few games. And I'm kind of happy that Warcraft 3 Reforged isn't even mentioned to see how bad it is.
First, in terms of the RTS that I'm really hoping they don't replicate is Age of Empires. I think Age of Empires has worse clarity on the battlefield than StarCraft and Blizzard games in total, as well as choppier animations. So you can't really... it doesn't feel as good to micro, and I know I'm going to anger a lot of Age of Empire fans, but that's 100% what I believe. I would say that actually Age of Empires 4 has a worse micro than Age of Empires 2, weirdly enough. But Age of Empires 2 still has a couple of odd walks where it looks like they're walking in a box, if you know what I mean. Like there's clearly pixels that they're following, and they're not just going over terrain.
Yeah, I never shared the excitement about Age of Empires 4. I love some content creators, but I didn't even finish the campaign in AoE 4, unfortunately.
But the
loved AoE 2.
The feeling of it is debatable. I would certainly say that factually correct. I'm that egotistical. I'm that confident in my favorite game. I think Age of Empires has worse clarity. That's just like an end statement fact. And I think it's really hard to get better clarity when you go for realism.
Yep.
So I'm not even... I think there's only so much they can do. Also, Age of Empires and its tick rate is just worse than what StarCraft has. And
it's also like there's no spells, really. No lasers that make things pop, right? It's just lances, swords, catapults here and there. So that's really hard.
And what Stormgate's going to have as well, so that's also going to impact our... take on the game once we have it in our hands. But visual clarity, this is an example of what I don't want to have happen. So I would say Stormgate's better than this, but I actually wouldn't say it's that much better right now. It's just that there's more effects in Stormgate than Age of Empires. So that's going to be the balancing act, right? Because the more effects you add, well, then that would obviously create more problems with the clarity, but then not having any special effects at all doesn't necessarily make it the most clear thing ever.
This is kind of hard to judge because this is a very small picture on the screen. It's also, like, of course, only stills, but I don't agree that Stormgate is just a bit better. I think it's a lot better than Age of Empires, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Age of Empires doesn't really have, sparky boom situations, but it's hard to see, the brown versus the knighted horses. Okay, that's okay. But then is that a different horse than this one? Oh, okay, I guess it is. That took me a second. Some of the archers sometimes don't look very different. Like this guy's a rocketeer. I don't know, actually. There's no rockets. And this guy, again, it took me a couple of seconds. I don't play it as much. And I know that's going to be a problem. I already discussed how that's a problem in general with video games, and there's mobs of this, which I can only assume are all the same units, but I honestly can't tell. So that's what I didn't want. And I think that basically Stormgate is hitting below StarCraft in clarity, but definitely above Age of Empires.
Yep.
And then I want to bring up a positive.
It definitely helps if you can go crazy with demons and robots. And magic, yeah, exactly. Or, dragons compared, like a frostworm compared to a gyrocopter. Like, of course, there's a huge difference. If you can add fantasy into the mix, etc. A lot more distinctive than if you compare it to, for example, Age of Empire ships. It's just, yeah, from the ground up, easier.
I've always said that Northgard is great for the clarity, as well as pretty good on the animation uniqueness as well. But the clarity is fantastic. The clarity of the different wooden buildings and the variety of their silhouettes is fantastic. They have a minor issue with, for instance, the Forester Lodge versus the house, I would say. But then everything else, you can pretty quickly determine what it is, even though it's, again, just a bunch of wooden houses.
I've never seen or heard about this game, to be honest.
And so we also have the units, which I think drastically differ once they change their job roles. If you ever played this game, that's what they do. So they become a villager, they go to the warrior hut, and they become a warrior, so on and so forth. But there's a pretty big difference between the villager and the warrior, for instance, and the warrior and the archer, or whatever pops out. So I would say that Stormgate maybe is more around here.
It's amazing. It's pretty good. Single player is great, fine game, very small player base. if there's a good single player, I'm kind of intrigued. Sounds like Viking Wars or something.
In terms of clarity, but that's good. I wouldn't say it's StarCraft's good. I wouldn't say it's Blizzard RTS good. So, yeah, that's where I'm currently at. So
I like. Oh, can you see it? It's so small. Is that the top settings? Yes, it is. So there, you can clearly see the axe. That is a pretty good sign of what's happening, similar to a grunt. Big guy, buffed guy, got an axe in his hand. You can see how sturdy it is. You can see he has an axe, so obviously melee. Good job at that then.
it's like maybe like a little above this, add some more effects, and you might get even worse clarity is one of the potential problems, again, without going into detail. Can't break up any specifics that I saw, but yeah. I hope that kind of covered what I was trying to discuss, which is just like, the clarity of the game still needs to work. I think that the feeling of the game, how the units seem to interact with the person, how the person controls the unit, seems not to be perfect yet. But I do believe in their vision, and I do know that they're really trying to make something unique.
I was talking about the grunt with obviously melee, but really, it's an axe thrower? I failed with my first analysis. Nice! Good job, Neo. You clearly know what you're talking about.
Not just StarCraft 2, which I would prefer more StarCraft 2, but I know there's a lot of other people out there who would not. So they're trying to add in basically a lot of cool shit, and we'll see if they actually hit it or miss it. And then that's all I can really say for now. So, TLDR, TLDW, positives, I like what they're talking about. I like the music, the animations match the design of the unit so far. And I had one, blown away moment, which is, it's still only one, which is a bit disappointing. And then the downsides, the negatives, what overall leaves me kind of mellow about it is that the clarity of the game in the battles is not there, and the apparent the user to game experience doesn't seem the best, but I can't truly say that because I haven't gotten my hands on it. So we're still at that point where honestly you could just say we're talking about nothing, and that is fair enough. I would also agree this isn't a lot. But because they are going to be showing off what they showed us, all the videos and stuff, on June 11th for the PC Gaming Show, I think there'll be a little more to delve into in the near future. And then once I get my hands on it, you can definitely expect a lot of vague, general, positive or negatives that are more concrete vagueness on the movement. That's what I'm going to be looking at the most. So that does it. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed my thoughts and some of the comparisons at the very least. Make it a little bit more of a unique video, but if you have anything more to discuss or ask, I'll try to answer what I can. And just look forward to Stormgate. I'd say we still have a lot to hope for, but it's a very long process, so it's going to be a little while. And that does it. Please like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff, and I'll see.
Exactly. Do it. ZombieGrub on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch as well. Always love to hear her insights on things. Pretty good mind for the games, and a very nice person to talk to. Did a podcast with her about casting Warcraft 3.
See
if you're
you guys
interested
later
in that.
for more.
Should be on the YouTube as well.